Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody. It gives me great pleasure to welcome my colleague and good friend Ben Davies, who's live from Romania. And we're in another educator spotlight. And with our theme of change in education, Ben has been through a very interesting journey, like many of our educators today, moving from a very academic school, which he was the head of, and then starting his own project in Romania and building a school that is all about change. So welcome, Ben. Hope all is good there in the mountains in Cluj.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Good morning, or yeah, very early morning for you. Yeah, it's all is well here. It's 7 in the morning here, and we're just starting our day. So it's great to see you.
Very good. So Ben, tell us about Colina Learning first, and then I'll ask you about your journey.
Yeah, okay. So we actually recently renamed from Colina Learning Centre to Colina International School, and I- I'll tell you a bit about the school. Essentially, I was very driven to join this project and to bring this project to life because um, I found, like you said before, I was in a more traditional school, and my belief is that the absolute priority for schools and for education is to focus on who the kids are and what they need, and that has to be the first thing that we prioritize when we're working with children. And I felt that in pretty much any traditional school, just because of the way that they're built, the technology that's used from classrooms, timetables, the way they are, these kind of things, you're automatically more focused on what needs to be taught and what needs to be learned. And the whole premise, if you like, of Colina International School is that our foundation is focusing on who the kids are and what their needs are and trying to meet those and trying to help develop those core things that make us people, and then on top of that, build the knowledge rather than perhaps what happens in most schools, which is the other way around, where you start with what needs to be learned, preparing them for whatever curriculum it is, and then if you're lucky, you add on some good social and emotional learning, or you add on some great extracurricular activities. Um, and the other thing I think I'd just like to share about the school at this point is we take our what we're aiming to achieve with the kids very seriously. The thing that we wish for all the kids that come to Colina is that they become really amazing learners, that they can build and enjoy good relationships in their life, and that they realize that they matter and can bring their ideas to life, that they can do things. And that sounds like a very simple objective and perhaps not too different to what many other schools have. But at Colina, we were able to build our curriculum around those three ideas. So the core of our curriculum is a skills-based curriculum, a competency-based curriculum. So most of our assessment, first and foremost, is um, constructed around, and more importantly, the feedback that we give around how the kids are as learners. And we've got specific skills, for example, focus and growth mindset, and self-awareness in learning that we try to help the kids intentionally develop. And then we have three competencies connected to how they build their relationships, and three competencies connected to how they have an impact in the real world. So by doing this, we make sure that most of our time every day is spent focusing on helping the kids develop those skills through the activities we're doing, through the learning experiences that we're doing. Do you want me to keep going, Gabrielle? I can say some more things, or do you want to ask
Yeah,
some
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
questions?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I've got a lot
Uh,
of lots of questions, but they can wait.
okay. Um, to make that happen, we have three main activities that we do in the school. Um, all the kids, whatever their age, so at the moment we've got kids from age 2 to 14 years old. We always start with a crew meet, which many educators will call a tutor time, but it's a very intentional space for what you might call PSE or you might call social and emotional learning. Although I'd say both of those things should actually go across the whole day. Um, but it's a time where we sit and we have space to talk about what our experiences are, listen to each other, receive each other with open hearts, talk about what we're feeling, solving any problems that there might be in the group, ensuring that any conflicts or differences or celebrations are enjoyed. We talk about the day basically, and we also use that time a lot for target setting and for peers holding each other to account for doing the things that they say they want to do. And so we have that space every day because we try to give the kids more space and autonomy, and we need that space every day. A, so the kids get that sense of belonging and connection with each other, but B, so that they are aware that they're holding themselves accountable for doing the things they say they're going to do. Um, we do we do academic work. We do some academic work around literacy and numeracy most days, and that would be the most similar part of our school maybe to a traditional school in terms of the fact that the kids have a dedicated hour for literacy and hour for numeracy. We have a combination of doing, rich activities and structured group learning activities with the kids for that. And then also we obviously use some AI and some great ed tech to help ensure that we're very forensic in the help that the kids are receiving to develop in literacy and numeracy. Interestingly, we originally didn't have this. We did that all through the next thing, which is the project-based learning. But we found it was very difficult to authentically include some of the literacy and numeracy elements through our projects because there were certain things that maybe a kid needed developmentally. But if we put it into a project, it would be obvious that we've kind of shoehorned it into the project, and we wanted the projects to maintain their authenticity. And so the main thing we do in the school is project-based learning, and the kids will do 5 big projects across the year. And we follow quite an obvious project-based learning cycle. We use expeditionary learning. So there's a big kickoff, obviously, and then the kids set some intentions, and then they start to learn about what they need to learn to meet those intentions, and they do things and they have some impact in the world. And yeah, so they're the 3 main things that we do in the school. And while we're doing all of those things, we're tracking those competencies that I mentioned before.
Sounds good, Ben.
So
Now, my question would be, we've all throughout our day so far, we've had several expressions of from different educators and school leaders who are like yourself trying to break through and uh, embody or do in real life what a lot of people talk about, no? And from my own experience, one of the main challenges when we do that is how you develop a narrative to quote unquote persuade the families that that is quality education and not getting high grades and learning the
yeah.
conventional stuff.
Yeah, it's really interesting that. And um, so actually, I've met quite a lot of people as well who um, who have there's some other small schools in Cluj as well. And what I've what I learned is to persuade the families, you have to bridge the gap between your idealism and the realistic world, the realism. There's a spectrum from idealism to realism. And so I'll give you an example. Um, Everyone has their own view on how important, say, mathematics is. We could argue that it's essential for every kid to learn maths, and that's important, or we could say that it's really not that important now because technology can do all the stuff that you need with number bonds. You could even, if you went at a push, say the same thing about literacy. And it doesn't really matter what your opinion on that is. But if you're running an innovative school, and you want to be credible enough to parents, you have to have a very clear strategy and a very clear reason for why you're doing what you're doing with literacy and numeracy. It's just one example, and how you're going to take that through and make sure that the kids, as well, you need to have a clear vision for how you're going to prepare the kids for the realities of the world. So, for example, you've probably guessed from listening to me talk so far, I'm not a fan of tests, I'm not a fan of exams. But on deeper examination, what I realized is I'm not a fan of forcing children to take tests and forcing kids to take exams. Like some kids are good at exams and exams exist. And if the world is like this and you can help a kid by preparing them for an exam when they're 18 so they can get into the university they want, absolutely. I think that's something that you have to accept and you should do. But I think it's also possible that you might be a kid who has a different profile and you've got no intention of ever going to university and you don't need to be able to sit exams to go to university. And I know that even, the IB tries to offer pathways around this, but I don't think they're genuine pathways. I don't think they're pathways necessarily where we're really able to adapt to what the kid actually needs. So to answer your question, how do you create a narrative for parents that means that they're compelled to join your school? I think the most important thing is you make them aware that you're aware of what the real world's like, and you make them aware of how you've got this vision, this beautiful vision, and you're bringing it to life, and it's based on academic research. But you also realize that you have to bridge the difference between that and what the kids will be facing. So you have certain check marks at certain points through their school journey where you explain how, for example, if you want to leave our school when the kid is 14, this is what we'll do and what will need to happen so the kid's ready to leave the school and go back into the main system, right? If you stay with us to 18, this is how we'll prepare your kids for either local exams, international exams, or no exams because you just don't care. But we make it very clear about how we'll do those things. Um, and we also what's interesting in our school now is we've got some clubs, extracurricular activities that are intensely academic because there's kids that want that. We've got kids that are doing 3 hours a week of Romanian literature after school, and they're loving it, and the teachers loving it, and it's what I imagine academic was meant to be. It's beautiful, but it's not then got those kids in the corner that are just like, why am I learning this? I don't care about this. I don't want to do that.
Ben, if you reflect upon your own personal journey, you were a teacher in the UK and then you taught internationally and then
Hmm.
you became a head. To think that you and I was your teaching assistant for IB higher level math. That's in a very distant past life of ours.
Really
Yeah,
is, isn't it? Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And then you became a head at that school, and then you left for this project that you're leading now. But I'd love for to hear how was your personal journey? How was your awakening to that there was a different thing that you wanted to do, that education really was about something else? How can you reflect on your own journey?
Yeah. Hmm, great question. Like, I mean, firstly, Gabrielle, you played a huge part in that. So the fact that I'm sat here in Transylvania trying to
To
hustle
dissuade
and
you.
grow, yeah, yeah, you trashed my career. So no, but um, but I think I'll start at the beginning because if there are any educators listening, there's these telltale signs, I guess. So um, I think the headline is I went from my identity being a teacher of mathematics to my identity becoming a teacher of children, which is about what I talked about with Colina at the beginning first. But how did that happen? Well, I was a teacher of mathematics in a UK state school, and I was the head of a maths department. And our job was to prepare the kids for the Cambridge exams, for the GCSE exams, and we did a really good job of that. And I could see the performance of the school improving, so the results were improving. I couldn't really see any manifestation of that in the kids. Couldn't see the kids actually getting any better at maths or developing anything that I felt was really going to help them in their lives. They were just learning to pass tests. They were learning when they get this question, give this answer, and we were drilling them to do that really well. And it started to feel quite hollow and like quite a waste of time. And I was really connecting with the kids, and I really wanted to do more meaningful things with them. I couldn't find a space to do that. I got into student voice, so I became the student voice coordinator, and you could start to do cool projects. But it was all just a little bit added on at the end of the day. And then, so I started to think in this way and think, I just want to connect with kids and learn about them and help them. That's all I wanted to do. So I was always looking for opportunities to do that. And uh, one story that I've told a lot because other than Colina, I also so that we could assess the kids in Colina and assess those competencies. Um, I'm involved in a startup that helps us to track the learning of the kids in these assessment and competencies. And actually, the people involved in the startup with, as you know, Gabrielle, they're ex-students of ours. And with one of those students, I had quite an epiphany moment, if you like, which was he was a student who didn't really fit the mold at school, and he was, um, quite disengaged with school. And he was in my maths class and he was sat in the corner, basically willfully not doing anything I asked and challenging me to challenge him almost. But we started to build a relationship. And then after about a month of teaching him, he stayed behind at the end of the class and he showed me that he'd created this online gaming community for tens of thousands of people. And I was just blown away looking at this kid. He was 14 at the time, being like, wow, like all I hear is that you're a problem, but right now you're showing me you're a leader, you're creative, you're a critical thinker, you're amazing, and you're completely unseen in school. And I remember in that moment, that was when like a lot of what you'd been saying to me, actually, and what I've been learning was just it all started to make sense. It all started to make sense. And I started to have lunch with him and some other students and some other colleagues in our old school where we just talk about what might it look like if we reimagine education. And we just had fun with projects and things. And I started to dream and I started to just, I mean, you gave me the freedom to imagine what it would be like if we made a school within our school. And, I started to be able to imagine that. And you start to study and you start to realize that if you start to look at research and education from almost any country, it shows you that what we're doing doesn't really make sense. And and my awakening came from two things then. Firstly, realizing that the hard side, the what research by academics shows or by universities shows is that education should be more student centered. There's an abundant amount of research that suggests that. And then the second thing was how I felt when I stopped worrying about what I thought my job was and instead started worrying about connecting with children. And Argentina is a beautiful place to do that because of the culture in Argentina and the sense of purpose I felt when I could connect, when I could just connect with kids and listen to them. And I'm sure that through those moments of connection, teachers have infinitely more impact on the kids and their future lives than when they're standing at the board teaching them something, or even with great pedagogies teaching them something. I think the things that really impact kids are the connection we have and the inspiration that we give them. Kids will learn what they need to learn with or without us.
They say that when you expand your consciousness, you can never go back. No, that certain
Mm.
things in life are irreversible, and this kind of awareness or awakening that you went through is probably one of those. Could you go back to work in a traditional school, Ben?
I don't think so. Um, it's so scary that question because, as you know, when you're working in innovative schools, it's quite tenuous, and you also have to make a living. But I don't think I can because the the reason that I became an educator was essentially because I love kids, and I also think that how our kids are treated when they're young and what values they develop and what beliefs they have. I think those things are really fundamental in forming what our world actually becomes. They're the future. And I became an educator because of all of these beliefs. And I don't think in all good faith I can just willfully go into a system where I believe like we're we're not only not really addressing that in the ways that I believe are correct, but almost even worse, we're claiming we are doing it when we secretly know we're not. Because if you go to any, I don't know, I would have to look very carefully at a school's mission and vision on their website because they're all quite similar, and then say, how are you doing that? And if I felt there was a genuine, real, intentional, um, profound, meaningful way to do it, maybe I'd consider working there. But if, as I'm afraid to say, it is the case in most places, if it's just lip service and marketing, no, no, I couldn't.
And a final inevitable question is AI. No, AI is
Mm.
it has been a theme in many of our segments so far, and it's again the elephant in the room. We all uh, try to focus on doing a lot of what is meaningful, but uh, there is this impending uh, threat in terms
Hmm.
of how it would affect our lives, um, in ways that, as you know, I'm a technophile and I'm very excited about
Hmm.
the development of AI in
Yeah.
terms of what it can do for learning. But I acknowledge and recognize the immense threats, especially to the workplace. How do you see that playing a role in the school that you are developing? How is that? I mean, I'm not
Mm.
interested in how you use it pedagogically, but how do you, in terms of the ethics, how it will shape the world that our kids will live in? What's your take on that, and what are you doing at Colina?
I mean, it's kind of overwhelming, isn't it? Actually, to think about. Um, I guess the headline is take on it is that AI is real and it's here, and it has to become. Uh, um, it is part of our daily practice. It's part of our daily routine. It's a tool the kids are going to have to use for better or worse. It's the tool that the kids are going to have to face for better or worse. And so, I think the first thing I want to say is we are accepting that, and any work that we do around AI is how to work with it and how to um, be aware of the benefits and the potential costs, um, rather than think about how to control it, so to speak. I think education often goes into like control, and we're not interested in that element. Um, and then yeah, we're having lots of conversations about, for example, because AI can do great things, but whatever data you put into it, it's not then secure depending on what AI you're using. So we do have a lot of conversations around things that I never really thought I would be very interested in, like GDPR, and things like that. But that's a reality, right? You have to
Yeah.
keep the most important thing, kids. You have to keep kids safe. Um, and then, one of the most, so we've got a parent who is writing academic physics papers using AI, and he's now like inviting our kids to help him with this work because AI makes all sorts of things accessible to non-traditional experts. So that's just one sort of insight. He believes that kids can now write academic papers and even potentially get them published. I'm not sure if he's right, but we're exploring it, and potentially get them published in academic journals because it's such a leveler in terms of gives you access to information and skills that obviously we didn't have before. So it's exciting in that sense.
Yeah, I guess the key question is how do we develop the deep intuition which coupled with cognitive mechanics of AI can significantly and positively impact the world. Now, if we can
Yeah.
leverage the use of AI and still keep our human intuition, which is still something that AI can't do very well.
Mm-hmm.
That's clearly the road ahead. But anyway, Ben, final question since we're approaching the end of the segment. Um, for most educators and I guess people who will be drawn to watching the recording of the video, um, they are they have the intention of being change makers, but probably their set of circumstances is not the most conducive for that, no? And
Mm-hmm.
you have that unique perspective of trying to find the space within the system and
Mm-hmm.
then creating your own space. What would you say to educators who are struggling to find the way or combat the many constraints they face to start enacting change in their schools and become more, as you said very eloquently and thanks for that. Um, how can they be faithful to their sense of purpose even if they're still within a rigid framework?
I don't know if it's a good, it's
If
dangerous
you had the answer
advice
to
in
that,
some
you'd write a
sense.
book and you wouldn't be here.
No, 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 no. It's not that. It's like, I mean, two things came to my mind, and I'm not sure if they're coherent, but I'll share them. Like, think about little hacks that you can do in your daily practice, little things you can carve out, little things that can be your own, where you can do something that feels meaningful, whether it's in a break time, whether it's a club with kids, whether it's a way that you're doing something within your class, whether it's something you're doing with your colleagues. One thing I learned was you can become a leader in a school long before you have a leadership position, because you can just say, I want to do something and start doing it. And uh, there'll be people in your school that are sympathetic to that. And depending on the culture in your school, you might even be encouraged to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, so long as you've got good judgment. But the idea is go and do something that feels good and meaningful for you, and you'll start to see, I think, where you put your attention, where your passion and your reason for being an educator is, you're going to start to, people are going to become drawn to you, and they're going to see that authenticity, and they're going to be inspired by it, and you're going to start to do great things. But you just have to start doing things. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank
Go
you.
back to your day to start doing things now.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Ben. Great
Gabrielle.
pleasure. All the
Thank you,
best.
Denise. Take care.
And for
Bye.
those of you who are live with us, we're going to return in 30 minutes. We are going to move over to Dubai with the American School of Dubai. Thank you, Ben.